If you like this podcast or the previous ones, please consider buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Frankie's pod. It just goes to help fund the software and the hosting. Welcome back to the podcast. In today's episodes, I'm talking to Dan. Hey, Dan, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good, Frankie. Thanks very much for the invite.
No, honestly, I'd like to say to everyone who comes on, thank you. You know, if you didn't come on here, I wouldn't be able to do it. So it's just the normal questions that I ask everyone, which is, where did you grow up? Why did you join the military? What was it like? And why did you leave? And what you did afterwards? So if you just want to start off with, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in the little sunny seaside town of Bognor Regis, conveniently remembered for its redcoats and crocodiles at Butlins.
Yeah.
So yeah, I grew up on the seaside, brought up there pretty much all my life. So a different place now, though. I wouldn't like to live there now.
No, a bit rougher.
It's certainly not the same as it was. I grew up in a nice little place called sort of Rose Green, and it was known for sort of like although I was in the council area, it was right next door to like the real affluent area of like where Princess Diana's dad, Earl Spencer, lived, and Phil Collins lived there and things like that. But yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't that posh. I grew up on the council estate next door. Where the house
that's like places up round by here. There's like a place there, Darras Hall, where all the footballers live and stuff like that, and it's like massive, £1 million houses to £10 million, stuff like that. And then just round the corner, there's this little like council estate that's rough as fuck. You know what I mean?
To be fair, it wasn't rough. It was a nice little council estate. Everyone knew everyone. Everyone helped everyone. And to be honest, it was quite a nice place to live and quite a nice place to grow up.
Yeah.
To be honest, I missed that part of my childhood. It was really good, and then it certainly changed the older I got and the wiser. I thought I got wiser, but I didn't.
No, never do.
No.
So, what made you want to join the military then?
So, like I said, I had a real good childhood upbringing up until a certain point. Parents divorced and remarried, sort of like mentally abused by my stepfather, who claimed to be ex-military, claimed to be ex-21 SAS, and been on the balcony and everything like that. And
it's a fucking big balcony, that, isn't it?
Oh, and I think I've met more people on that balcony than anywhere else in the world, I think. And then my life took a turn for the worst. I sort of grew up from, sort of probably the age of then, sort of 13, 14, to sort of like watching my mum get abused and my sisters and everything like that. Not sexually or physically or anything like that. It was just purely mentally. Just the screaming, the shouting, the anger, I was made to go out and work at 13, sort of 14 years old. I had 3 jobs as well as going to school. I'd come home, I'd find my wardrobe emptied out on top of my bed, my chest of drawers emptied out on top of my bed. I'd be like pushed onto the bed, screamed and shouted at, made to fold everything back up into the drawers, A4 size. I wouldn't be allowed to leave my bedroom until that was done, and if I put my telly on at night or my radio on at night when I was in bed, that would go out the window. I'd be screamed and shouted at. I'd be grounded for weeks on end. And it just got to the stage where, I struggled and I ended up leaving home. I went to live in Great Yarmouth with my dad, where he lived with his ex-wife. So my late father sort of worked in the oil rig industry. He was ex-Navy. But came out, worked in the oil rig industry as a diver, so he lived on the East Coast in Yarmouth. Ended up living there and got into a lot of bother. I was fighting, I was gambling. There's 6 months of my life that I don't remember, I have no recollection of. I still don't believe it actually ever happened or existed until I moved back to the UK, and I went to Southampton Hospital in Southampton, and it was like something like 61 North Road, Great Yarmouth. And I was like, yeah, we've got this as your address for first 6 months. And like, my dad always used to tell me how he rescued me from this place, but I never remembered it. And it got to the stage where I was getting arrested all the time and things like that they basically turned around and said, if you don't do something in your life now, you're going to end up in jail, and you're probably not going to live to see your 18th birthday. And so my stepmum and my dad sort of kind of frog marched me down to the careers office in Magdalen Street in Norwich, and I met this big infantry sergeant who said, you can do this, you can do that. Done the old barb test and got given my qualifications. I actually wanted to join the Royal Navy as a bomb disposal diver, the same as my dad was. There was a 3-year waiting list, so they basically said, you're not staying here for 3 years, you've got another thing coming. I then thought about a port operator based down in Marchwood in Southampton, because my dad had a lot to do with port operators and or ports and cranes and things like that. He said that was a good job, and there was at the time there was a year waiting list, and then they turned around to me and says, "Oh, you've got an MVQ in catering," and I was like, "Yeah, I had no choice but to go to a college in Brighton, where I learned cooking. Can't cook, won't cook, to be honest." So they dangled the carrot, like most of us have been had the experience of in the careers office, and ended up joining the army in 1995 as a bloody chef. And hated every minute of it.
I'm not going to do the old joke of the hardest course. You know what I mean?
Yeah, hardest course no one's passed it. That's why I fucking had to transfer. Then.
To be fair though, the catering corps, I've always said that they're some of the hardest working people in the army.
I must admit, we did work hard. When we was out on exercises and places like that. It was, or even though we had our NBC proof tent. In the exercise period, even in Iraq, I think in 2003 we had an NBC proof tent at times, or people think we did, which was always nice rather than running around with your resi on in the middle of a field. But so like I say, joined as a chef, done plenty of tours because it was all Bosnia and Northern Ireland back then, Cyprus and Kosovo, Macedonia, and everything like that. So I'd done plenty of tours as a chef. I went from 4GS regiment. Well, actually, my first regiment or battalion was the Black Watch when they were still at Purbright, and they were literally just moving to Inverness. And because I was a southerner, and I was like 6 stone wet through and spotty, they hated me, and they basically threatened to fill me in every night of the week. So. They asked if I wanted to stay and get reposted or go up to Scotland. I was like, I'm out of here. Ended up in Dalton Barracks in Abingdon.
Yeah.
With 4GS Regiment, where basically I was a tracksuit soldier if I wasn't on tour, which was great. And then went to Bicester, St David's Barracks with 2-3 Pioneer.
It's quite a size, that one, isn't it?
Yeah. Got married, then got a voluntary posting to Germany. So my boss walked in one day and went, I need someone to go to Germany. Anyone want a posting to Germany? I was like, I'll go. So that was it. Next thing I knew, a week later, I was off to Germany. The wife was like, what are you playing at? We're due to get married in a couple of months. I was like, well, we can afford it now. I'm posted to Germany. That lucked out well. Went to Hona with the Light Dragoons.
Yeah.
So for anyone that remembers Hona back in the day, you had there was 3 RHA,
I was there
RMPs, 1 AFA, 3 to Engineer Regiment, and the Light Dragoons, and then they were taken over by the 912 Lancers. And then shortly after that, I promoted. So I'd actually gone from Abingdon to Bicester on promotion, then went from Bicester to Hona, and then I left there on promotion to Hereford with the Signals, 1 UK Armoured Divisional Signal Regiment in Hammersmith Barracks. Went there, and then that sort of evolved onto the Telic scenario. So for anyone that's worked and knows the Signals, obviously they got the Rebros, and they went out quite early because obviously they set up the Rebos rewrote for the comms and everything, that link between sort of like all the Allied forces and the British forces coming through and everything after the spearhead of everything that went on. So I went out there with them, loved it, absolutely brilliant. Wanted to retrain or retrade to PTI, to the PT Corps. My SO2 catering officer, Major Larry Downs as he was then, was like, no, not a chance. You're too good to be a PTI. You're too good to be a gym queen. I need you here. So when I got back, I then got posted to Canada. So basically turned around and was like, anyone want to post into Canada? Well, in fact, so there's a bit of a story behind this. So there was 3 postings. And the boss was Mark Brunton. He come in and he was like, right, I've got 3 postings. I'm going to give you 1 each day, but I want you to write a letter as to why you want this posting. So
Nice.
The first one, Richie Hinder, he was ex-RAF and he transferred into the army. And Richie lives just around the corner from me now, actually, all these years later. It was a posting to Gibraltar. So he wrote a letter saying, sir, I'd love to go to Gibraltar. My wife's Maltese. She speaks the language. She's got, obviously, her ancestry tree is sort of in Gibraltar and everything like that. Yada, yada, yada. I think this will be a good, for my family and work-life commitment and, an experience that my family would be grateful for, having left their native country to come and support me in the army and this and the other. Okay, Richie, brilliant. Well done. That's you. You're off to Gibraltar. He went off and had a 2-year posting to Gibraltar. Absolutely brilliant. The next day it was, or sort of like a few days later, it was Northern Ireland. And Paul Anderson, his wife Heather, she was Irish and they wanted to go back to Northern Ireland. No brainer. So I'm sat there, I'm like, fucking great. Where am I? I'm going to end up in Alta Mongolia or something. So he says, so like a week later, he comes up and he says, Dan, unfortunately, I've got some really bad news for you and your posting. I was like, I fucking thought there might be. I said, I don't speak Spanish. I don't speak Maltese. I've got no ancestors. I'm not Irish. I said, what is there left for me? He says, you got a posting to Bathurst in Canada for 2 years. I was like, yes. He says, but unfortunately, you don't drive. And that's one of the caveats. You have to be able to drive. So, and I always had this thing that I would never pay for my own driving license or anything. I wanted the military to put me through it. I said, I don't care if by the time I'm 50, and I can't drive, and it'd be because the army haven't put me through my driving test. So anyway, so I ran straight round to MT, got on to the fleet and said, right, get me a driving test booked down at Osnabrück. So I had some bombardier from Osnabrück, from Foredge, was my driving instructor, and there was me and 3 Fijian lads. It was me, 2 Fijian lads and a Ghanaian lad. And the first thing you had to be able to do was prove that you could do an emergency stop on the parade square in Osnabrück. None of them could do it. And so it was just me that got it right. So I used to race minis when I was a kid. If I weren't stealing them, I was racing them. I wasn't stealing them. I was racing them.
Borrowed.
Borrowed around the oval in Worthing. He basically kicked them out, RTU'd them and said, right, you and me, we're just going to drive around Osnabrück for the next week, go on the Autobahn, we'll go to my house, we'll watch a bit of the football, because at the time, in 2004, I think it was the World Cup or the Euros in 2004, whichever one it was.
I'm not a big football person.
Yeah, it was just starting, so it was like in the afternoons, we were around his house, supping a few beers, and then at the end of the week, he was like, right, you ready for your test now? And off I went, and then, come back and got 2-year posting to Canada. And it's probably one of the best highlights of my army career was, one, not only was my youngest son, he was born out there, but I was promoted to sergeant after sort of 8.5 years service. And it was the time
That's not bad going, that, is it?
Yeah, I was flying. Yeah, I mean, if I'd have stayed, I would have commissioned. But I'll come on to that in a minute. It was the 100th Centennial Trail Ride of Alberta. So it was basically, we were on this exercise where we'd leapfrog in front of in like the old westerns where you see the horse and carriage, the big sort of
The wagon, yeah.
The wagon, yeah. It was just thousands of them across the prairie in Canada, around sort of like the state of Alberta. We would sort of like leapfrog between the teams from like A all the way round to B. And then at the end of it, it was, I can never remember his name, but the Premier of Alberta was there sort of doing a speech on national television and everything like that. It was being broadcast to the whole of Canada. And then there was sort of like a lull and a pause. And last time I saw him, he was a brigadier, but he was a full colonel then, the Bats Commander, Colonel Simon Levy, who was actually the guy that promoted me from Lance Corporal to full corporal when I left Hona to go to Hereford. He was like literally interrupted everyone, bear in mind we've got national film crews and everything like that. Sergeant Dan, it's Sergeant Dan here, and I was like, is he fucking on about me? I was like, what's he on? So I was like, yeah, I'm here, Colonel. I was like, oh, brilliant. Come on. He was like, promote me, in front of everyone. And I was just like, is this for real? So, obviously promote me. He's like, unfortunately, I'm going to lose you. It's like, because I was like his personal chef there. So, and I was like, it was absolutely amazing. So then I got the Premier of Alberta to like sign the 100th Centennial Trail Ride book. There's a picture of me in it and that. So I'm actually sort of named in a book and everything like that. But yeah.
Bloody hell.
And then I came back. I got posted from Battus after 2 years.
Can I just ask you a daft question? So you said your son was born in Canada. Does he get dual nationality because of that?
Yep.
Jammy bugger.
You'd like to think so, but it doesn't help. So basically, the dual nationality doesn't really do anything, and he has to. He was 18 last August, so he had to make the decision by the time he was 18 whether he's going to have a Canadian passport or British passport. However, in terms of, so he's like a semi-pro ice hockey player.
Right. Okay.
So if he wanted to play for, say he was good enough to get selected to play in the NHL and play for Canada, he could do, because he's still got that dual nationality, or he could play for Team GB. He's probably going to end up playing for Team GB, I would imagine. But, obviously given a choice, Canada all day long. I'm a massive ice hockey fan, Calgary Flames fan. But yeah, and I've played it for years and I coach it and stuff like that as well. Given a choice, I'd like to go back to Canada tomorrow. So I come back, got posted to 3-5 Engineer Regiment, and that was what was that? That was Telic 8. So I deployed with PWRR on Telic 8 as the Div Reserve Battle Group. That was the same tour that Colour Sergeant Ian Page got shot, sort of like in the side of the face, and then it lodged in his jaw, where Michelle Norris, got awarded the MC for saving Ian Page's life. It's quite a kinetic tour. And then as the tour developed, anxiety and things started to develop in me. One of the things was at night, for those that have been to Shiver Log Base and Basra and everything, it was constantly getting mortared. And I was finding myself waking up in random places. And it was just like, so you've been to Shiver yourself?
Yeah. So
where the big aircraft hangars are. You can literally walk up the side of them, can't you? And then at the front of them, they've got the big concrete plinth ledges and everything. Early one morning, sort of 2-3 in the morning, I woke up on one of them. And I was like,
okay, oh.
What am I doing here? It was like someone had picked me up and put me there, and I had no recollection of it. And then, I would find myself waking up underneath a warrior, or on top of it, or in just random places. So I was like, what is going on? And it was starting to scare me. So I went to the med centre and I spoke to the doc, and I said, this is happening. What is going on? And he said, you've got high anxiety stress disorder. I went, what the fucking hell is that? And that's what they basically alluded it to then. And basically what was happening was, it was like a form of battle shock. My body was sort of shutting down subconsciously to protect himself and sort of trying to run away from the danger, you know, by protecting my brain that was kind of having a meltdown inside. So I ended up getting Kazivac. And then when I came back, I went to Athlone Barracks in Paderborn, where the 5 rifles were, and under the CPN, psychiatric community nurse, or community psychiatric nurse, where I underwent sort of mental health treatment for.
How long was that? How long did that take for you to cope with that?
It lasted sort of like the best part of a year.
Right.
So at first it was sort of twice a week, and then it sort of, over the period of time, it sort of dropped down to once a week, and then it sort of became once every 2 weeks, once every month, to sort of basically sort of expand out over the period of a year. And then I was told that I was going to go back to Iraq sort of a year later. And that was it. And I was like, I didn't want to be a chef, didn't want to go back to Iraq. I wasn't in a good space. So I transferred. In fact, well, actually, I signed off. I'd signed off the army because I just didn't think I could cope with it mentally at the time. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
How did your regiment treat you with that? Were they good to you? Because I mean, we've both known people who suffered mountain illness in the military, and they don't get treated very well.
To be honest, because I was still sort of going to work and doing my job and engaging in PT and things like that, nothing was really said because no one really knew. I hadn't sort of put my head above the parapet and highlighted it, and it was all kept sort of under wraps. So I started speaking about it towards the end. I think there was a little bit of a stigma because I'd sort of, I wouldn't say short toured. It was like we were there 6 months and we only had like 3 weeks left to go. I think we was there for 6 months and 3 days, but we had 3 weeks left of the tour to go. And we moved from Basra up to from Schreiber up to Basra Air Station, to the back of the air station there, in what they called the red zone, where just up near where the field hospital was. So I got a little bit of jib for that. And I was just like, yeah, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I laughed it off. And nothing was really said that much.
I think some of the stigma you give yourself as well. You know, you feel embarrassed. You feel as though you've let people down. And you haven't. You haven't.
There was more stigma after than there was at the time. Sort of, and I'm talking sort of years and years after. There was sort of more of a stigma surrounding it. But then, at the same time, the military started to evolve in learning that actually the mental health is real and something needs to be done about it. I was quite lucky in that sense, and I got a lot of. I thought I was all right for many, many years after that, and then within the last couple of years of me leaving the army, so I signed back on. So I signed off. I got posted to 17 Port Maritime Regiment in Southampton, in Marchand, and I was there as a senior NCO chef. Signed off, but I was still going away on the boats, on the exercises and on the trips and things like that. And I've watched the marine engineers and got to know some of the lads and some of the divers and things like that. And I was like, so what? I'd like to do that, So I put in to sign back on and transfer to marine engineer. So they basically said, that's not a problem. You can do that. It's one of the hardest courses in the army, as in technical courses. It's a year long, so it's like 14, 15 months long of technical engineering, sort of on a weekly basis. You every week there was an exam. It could be a 40-minute exam, could be a 3-hour exam. And
is that RLC or engineer? RLC,
so
it's a trade I don't know nothing about. I didn't know it existed.
So it started off as Royal Engineers. So some people will know that 2-8 engineers that were based in Hamel have like the Whiskey 525s and the CSBs, combat support boats. Obviously the river craft and everything like that. March would have landing craft, work boats, Whiskey 525s. At the time, they had the larger landing craft, and they had the Mexi as well, which does all the ship to shore capabilities. So I thought, you know what, I want to be a marine engineer. You know, I'm never too old to learn. I think it'd be good. And if I stay in Southampton, because it's sort of like a permanent posting, it'll be good for the family. So that's effectively what I ended up doing. I was a selected staff sergeant whilst I was away on my course. So obviously that got removed from me. So obviously I then straight away got deselected from that because I was on a transfer course. And I went from a selected staffy to a lance corporal. So to then have to work my way back up the ranks, including doing my CLM and everything again, and you know your NPC and your NPCA, because I'd done the old NPC and the NPCA and everything like that. I then had to go and do the new CLM, and I was like, I've done the senior one. Why would I want to go and do the junior one again? You know, when I've already done it. Oh, because it's different. It's like, it's not. It's just fucking given a different title. It's still the same crap. You know. Obviously now they've.
So was that a loss of pay
it.
as well?
So I kept my pay for 2 years, and then I dropped down. But I was almost making up for it with LSA and things like that. But my sort of point to that was, if I can get the qualifications as a marine engineer and learn the engineering trade and the qualifications that we get through being a marine engineer, I would be better off in Civvy Street when I left than what I would be as a chef, you know. And like I sort of said earlier, yes, would I have commissioned? Absolutely no doubt in my mind I would have commissioned, but would I have enjoyed it? You know, or anything can happen, you know, that could have prevented that. You know, I was on the right track. You know, like I said, after 8.5 years, I was promoted to sergeant after 9 years I was wearing it. You know, so I had another 15 years to make WO2, WO1 to commission. Luckily enough, the old pay as you dine was coming into effect sort of around 2006, 2007 as well. And I was part of the pay as you dine team, and sort of like that sort of made me think about sort of signing off and doing or doing something to better my life as well. So that's what I've done.
Best decision they ever made, I think.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree. I know and then transferred, and thankfully, you know, never looked back. And the job, I left the army because it was my time served, time done, 24 years. Didn't really want to do any more. I was too set in my ways, too old school to start adapting to this new culture that the army sort of derives itself on. This, dare I say,
I got out when did I get out? 2012 I got out. I'm fucking glad I did.
Yeah.
I could see it all changing then. You know, I worked as the last part of my career was working with one of the RC. I was like the RCMO's assistant. I got given do it for 6 months, ended up doing it for 6 years, and they extended me to carry on doing it. But it got to the, you know, and I could see things start to change and change and change and change.
Oh,
And
I was working in the SQMS in my last couple of years, and I was really lucky that I had good bosses and that. Good bunch of lads, great bunch of lads, and you know, the resettlement process I invested a lot of time in. Absolutely ripped the resettlement process apart to the extent where Lieutenant Kroll, Dave Kroll, retired colonel, sort of come in and tried to chew me out, and I proved him wrong in front of the class. Ripped up everyone's CV. So everyone had written CVs. The tutor, she was like, I asked her, you know, are you going to mark these? Are you going to tell us where we're going wrong, or you know what to do? She's like, no, you're going to do that. So I was like, what do you mean?
She's like, well, fucking point of that.
I literally got them all. I was like, collected them all up and ripped them all up from in the bin, and just sat there, and everyone like looked at me as if saying, what the fuck are you doing? I said, the only person here that's written a CV before, I said, is me. We established that at the start of this process. So why are we going to all now sit down and mark each other's CVs when none of us have written a CV before? Because we don't know what we're doing. So all you've done is waste our time. And she went and complained, and then they come in. So then that's put on another, bring in another CV writer. You know, at WO1, I've been in the army 37 years, sat there, burst into tears. It's like, am I going to get a job? You know? So yeah, it's...
Yeah, I mean, I think the resettlement process. I've spoke a lot about this with people on the podcast, and none of it. I don't think anyone I spoke to, including myself, had any faith in it. I
It's
don't
too
think that,
outdated. It's not suited for what is needed. Don't get me wrong. There's good parts of it, and there's bad parts. There's good parts and bad parts of everything. But the way in which they aim it at people is at your Joe Blogs private that's been in a year and getting out. They don't take into account that people do a full career and have qualifications, and okay, there's a little bit on transferable skills, and there's a little bit on the financial side and housing and things like that.
but only
in
tiny. They
terms,
don't give you enough information. They don't
no.
talk to you enough.
So all these what they called agency networks that they put you in touch with, like Indeed and Right Job and everything like that.
Yeah.
So if you take the jobs that they're giving you, so like, and this is another thing I proved. I said to I almost kind of took over because I put a lot of time and effort, and I was quite passionate about this, and I found this out very quick that if you go onto their website that they're giving you and you take a job, I know, say a media analysis, all right? There's an advertisement for BFBS, a media analysis engineer or whatever. Go through their website, 30 grand a year. If you go direct, it's 35, and they're taking that commission.
Yeah, so they're acting as like employment
and that's
agents.
how they're making their money. And we all know that recruitment agencies are commission based. That's their job.
Yeah.
But they're taking that money out of your pocket, out of my pocket, out of Joe Blogg's pocket, out the private, out the WO1's pocket, And I proved this. And I went round the class and like, choose a job. Any job, right? Go on to their page. Right now, go on, find out who's advertising that job. Now, go on to their careers page directly, because every company has a careers page, and then apply for their job and see what the wage band difference is. And on average, it was about between 4 and 6 grand. And like, she was like, well, that's just coincidence. I was like, on every job.
Yeah.
On every job. I said, that's why you're commission based. That's capita are paid by the MOD, and then you take your commission based by getting people into employment, but you're taking it off their wage. So they want to employ ex-military, because that, like Babcock's is a prime example, because they know that you've already got a pension and things like that,
so they're going to try and pay you less. Yeah. I mean, every company has to make a profit, but I mean, the thing I found with talking to people about, the transition into civistry is that no matter how long you've served and all that, whether it be, full term, 12 years, 6 years or whatever, nobody's prepared for leaving. The military doesn't prepare you properly. Once you've signed off, or it's your last 12 months or whatever like that, you're like a leper. Nobody wants to know you. They don't want, you just don't get you don't get the support that you need, really.
I was kind of lucky, because as well as sort of being in the military, I worked, and I still do to some extent, worked in the security industry for 15 years, and that gave me an outlook on both sides of the fence. So I obviously have an outlook from a military guy looking out, but also a civilian guy looking in. So I learned very quick how to liaise and deal with members of the public and interact with them and talk to them and everything, which is different how we act around each other and talk to each other. We know our humour. There's certain things we can say within our dark humour that we can get away with, that if you said that out there, you'd probably be arrested. Or you'd certainly probably lose your job. If you said it in front of the wrong. I've come close. So but yeah, so I mean, I transferred to marine engineer. The time come for me to leave after 24 years, and I was very lucky in finding a job. I had 3 jobs straight away, 3 very good job offers. One for Volvo Penta in Southampton. The other one was for the RNLI as an engineer, a paid engineer down at Poole, helping design lifeboats. And the other one was at Porton Down for Public Health England as a shift engineer. And obviously that's now UK Health Security Agency. And I was like, so I ummed and ahed. The Volvo Penta one was like, okay, it's okay, but I want a bit more money. It wasn't quite offering the sort of money I wanted. It was only about 28, 29 grand. And I wanted a little bit more. The RNLI job was good. It was like 38 to 40 grand. I think it was 38 to 42 grand, depending on experience. I was like, oh, so yeah, I was successful in the application for that. But I then added it up and I thought, the mileage on my car, the time I've got to commute to and from work every day, if you add that up over a period of a week, that's an extra week's work, so to speak, that I'm giving them. And then I thought, then porting down as a shift engineer, ended up taking that job. It's 35 minutes from where I live. It was 2 days, 2 nights, 4 off. So which was quite good. And I'm not going to lie, we were like glorified caretakers. If the shit hit the fan and went wrong, then you would, you bust the gut. You were grafting, during your 12-hour shift. But 9 times out of 10, I was sat there with a brew, with a fag, watching Netflix. I watched so much on Netflix in them 3 years. It was unbelievable. Don't get me wrong, I still done my job, but it was easy, and the only reason I left that job was because of the work-family life balance, because there was only 4 of us. Couple of people left, and then it became that we were doing nights constantly. We were working every weekend, and there was just no let up. And I was like, look, I can't do this. I'm gonna have to leave. So I applied for another job as a mobile HVAC engineer, because I'm F-gas certified, still with refrigeration gases and stuff like that. Know a bit about aircon systems from working as a shift engineer, porting down. I'm working with the guys there. Got that job straight away. And then and I saw another job come up a year later. So unfortunately, I was only there for a year, but that was good, working for ABM. It was a job a knock. Sometimes if I went to Brent Cross, it was a bit of a longer day. But if I was, say, in Southampton, I was home in 4 hours. If I dragged it out, if I had 4 cups of tea instead of 2, if I had 10 cigarettes instead of 1. Because it was that easy, and that was on I won't say the name, but a main mobile phone retailer, and it wasn't Samsung. So, it was another big retailer, and I was responsible for that contract on the South Coast. But my contract got bigger, so I was being asked to go further afield here and further afield there, because again, engineers had left or had spat the dummy out the pram and said they're not going to do that. And at first I was like, yeah, I'll do it, and then there was like, well, they're not going to pay me for it. So I was like, well, then I'm not doing it. And I was like, well, it's part of your job now because you've been doing it so long. And I was like, see you later, I'm off. And the job as a regional engineering manager come up, which I'm doing now. So in terms of that time when I took a reduction in rank and pay, the plan was that it would better sustain me and my family in life when I left. And luckily enough, touch wood, it's worked out.
Yeah, it sounds it.
I've been very, very lucky, and I know some aren't, but it's also given me the opportunity to help others because of that, from my experiences, and help start up a veterans charity, Behind the Heroes, because that, unfortunately, due to financial constraints, we had to close that because of funding. It was costing us too much money. It's still going in the background, but not officially. And long may it continue. But yeah.
So, I mean, the work at Porton Down, I mean, I suppose that would have been quite interesting, or you would have thought it would have been, with it being Porton Down. The only experience I've got of that place was in the late 90s. In fact, no, it was the early 90s, I tell a lie. It was the early 90s, and I was posted to Lark Hill, the school there. And we had to, as part of the garrison duties at the time, you had to go and stag on there with the civic guards. So we'd do like 3 nights there, and we just used to. There was nowhere for us to kip or anything like that. We'd literally sleep in the naffy on the pool tables, and go out with the guards. And I mean, it was long before MPGS and stuff like that. They were just, I can't remember what they were called. But basically, they were just driving out on fields, going lamping. Anyone could have broken into that place. There was only one little old guy on the gate type of thing. And one of our lads stood there with a rifle. That was it.
Certainly a bit more secure now.
Yeah,
They've got armed response police there and everything now. Well, you got two sides. You got the Public Health England side, or the UKHSA, and then you got the DSTL, which is like the military side. So, say for example, your vehicle's involved in an IED, or you get shot, or something like that. That's where they send all your military kit for testing and everything like that. To see how the ballistics hold up and everything like that. And then they've got other assets there in relation to the Public Health England side. Obviously, even though I don't work there now, I can't go into detail through non-disclosure agreements and oath of allegiance, stuff like that. So I've got to be careful what I say, mostly because the company that I worked for when I left there is now the company that employs me now. So,
nothing to do with the Official Secrets Act. I just want to keep your job.
yeah. So obviously it could come back to bite me in the backside.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
When I got there, it was
anyway.
one contract, and then another company took over, so we all 2P'd off over to another contract because they renewed it. They lost it. We then 2P'd over to another bloody contract. They're still there, and that's who I was working with when I left. I mean, I left on good terms, obviously, but now, obviously, a year and a half later, I've gone back to them, but on a different contract and a more senior role than what I was on before. So yeah.
If I can just take you back a bit, you mentioned that you did security work. Was that while you were serving as well?
Yeah.
So you had like the two jobs going. What was that like? What did that involve?
So basically, I've done everything from working on the doors to corporate events to festivals to covert teams and festivals, close protection work, to teaching the first aid and the SIA courses, and physical intervention, conflict management, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been good.
So how did you find that?
It was just another way to earn money. I mean, when I first started, it was back in the day where you could still get paid cash in hand. So it was extra beer tokens. You go and work on a door on a Friday night, on a club downtown on a Thursday, Friday night, or even a Saturday night. You knew you had cash in your hand. Generally, what used to happen was you'd do a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night on the door. And then at the end, and then you'd all meet up either on the Saturday night in a venue or the Sunday afternoon venue. You get given your envelope with your wages in. You sit there, you all have chat shit about who you sparked out on the door, and things like that. Not that I ever did, luckily enough, but there was always someone that sparked someone out and used his head as a battering ram through the cigarette machine and the fire exit door, because that's what bouncers were like back in the day before they sort of started to clean it up. And then you sit there and drink all the money you've earned over the last 3 days. But no, you sit there, you have a beer, and then you'd be off, and then earn some extra money. But obviously, then I sort of evolved into other things within the security industry, like the close protection side of it, and and the training side, and sort of more of your covert stuff and things like that. It was good. There was loads of guys from my regiment doing it. There's loads of guys from the regiment I used to be at still doing it. It's just harder to get the cash in hand now, unfortunately.
So if we move forward a bit more, you mentioned earlier about the charity, the veterans charity that you had started up or were involved in. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
So so Mick Riley, who was a former Regimental Army Sergeant Major, MBE, great guy. He was posted. He was one of my former Sergeant Majors. We all sort of kind of met through TikTok again. And
we'll get onto that one in a minute.
And another friend of ours, Jenny, she'd sort of had experiences and dealings with someone that suffered PTSD and and things like that. And then we sort of got a bit of a WhatsApp group going with some veterans, things like that, come up with the idea, and it was like, and it was mainly them that come up with it. That we started up a veterans charity called Behind the Heroes, and what that was is we could signpost people for mental health issues. So if people were struggling and they didn't know where to turn, we could guide them to the right place to get the right help they need, be it PTSD, anxiety, depression, drinking, drugs, gambling, financial, housing, jobs, anything that we could help to get them pointed in the right direction, to get them back on the straight and narrow. And then along with that as well, we had camps, organised camps. So we'd say, right, we'd have one up north, one in the Midlands, one down south. We'd take, and we'd do a couple each year. And we'd say, right, we're going to organise it, let's say the 1st of July, because that's around the corner. And we're going to go to the New Forest, and we're going to go camping for a long weekend in the New Forest. We're going to have a hike around the New Forest. We're going to go and see the wildlife. We're going to go for a walk down the beach. We're going to walk through paddle through the shore, and we're going to sit there at night. We're going to build a fire. We're going to sit there and chat shit, and just talk to each other, open up if you want to, or sit there and just be around other veterans that are going through the same sort of thing. And it was really good. It worked really well. It was really successful. Helped loads and loads of people, and the aim of it was that if we could save one life, that
Yeah,
through,
I mean that's how you quantify it.
we've done what we set out to do, and dare I say, and this isn't me wanting to take credit for anything or but I think collectively as a group, I would say it was probably over 20. The hardest one for me was a female medic that reached out. I've known her for years. She was actually on my resettlement course. And afterwards she messaged me and she was like, Dan, I love you with all my heart. Platonically, you've saved my life. If it wasn't for you, I would not be here holding my daughter to this day. And I knew that the reason we set the charity up was absolutely worth it. Unfortunately, because of the financial constraints and the funding, everything, we tried everything. They got Johnny Mercer involved. They'd gone to mayors and things like that to help. They'd gone to bid writers to get funding and things like that. And it just, the amount we were spending was more than what we were being able to bring in, be it donations through TikTok or, GoFundMe page or anything. At the time, it was sort of just not long after COVID. Money's tight, people are out of work. And, unfortunately, we started then getting letters from the tax man saying, you owe this amount of money, you owe that. So, it got to a stage, I was the treasurer, so I had to sort of effectively close it down, the CIC down, and, liquidate it. It's still there. And if we want to pay the money to reinstate it, obviously we could do, but it's, unless you go missing in Portugal for being a baghead, people don't want to donate.
I've seen, since like COVID, since like the amount of charities that have folded. I mean, there's lots of little ones popping up as well.
Yeah.
But the amount, I mean, I understand Help for Heroes is no longer growing as well. I'm not sure about that, but I was told that.
So it is, but it's just under a different caveat, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's still, the brand is still there, but it's kind of franchised out because it's more, I think they're trying to get rid of like the CIC status of a limited company to more of a brand image to make money from. And, I said, I don't know whether you've come across Dave Watson. He's a triple amputee. He's on the Veterans Lottery card and things like that. Absolutely quality bloke. And I said to him, I said, Dave, obviously you've been through Help for Heroes. I said, but do you think they've used you to promote themselves? And he was like, absolutely. He said, 100%. He said, but at the end of the day, I have to be selfish and I have to look after number one. And I was like, absolutely, 100%. Fair play to you. It's just annoying that you've now got to raise money to get new legs because the ones you had broken, and they can't help you now. They were willing to help you back then, but you've gone away on holiday, you've come back, and your leg's broken, your prosthetic's broken, and they're not prepared to help you now. Because the image is passed now.
I think as well, like you're saying with the lack of donations from the public and stuff like that. I don't know. I might be wrong, but I think we've fell out of favour again with the public because of Afghans over, Iraq's over. It's not in the news every day. People aren't seeing stuff like Wotton Bassett, and things like that. And there's a lot of people who you walk down into the town centre and you'll see a table laid out and there's a couple of guys there, with a fucking combats on and stuff like that, and you're like, what were you collecting for? There's a lot of shysters out there. And again, it puts people off.
Yeah, I mean, I've had two different scenarios where I've been into different towns in uniform. I was ironically, not that I eat that much McDonald's, but they've both happened in McDonald's, and I was stood there once queuing up. I think we'd just come back from exercise. I think it might have been Fleet Services, McDonald's or Fleet Services. Come back off exercise, and this woman, obviously, you get loads of squaddies and that, loads of military on the M3 services at Fleet. And this woman, she kept like looking at me, and I was like, "Oh, fucking, here we go, gonna get Godfall or something." And she turned around, she grabbed hold of me, started crying, started sobbing her heart out, like. And I was just like, what do I do? And I just put my arms around her. I was like, turns out she lost her son in Afghan 2 weeks before.
Well,
And there I am, stood there, and it almost makes me well up now.
Yeah.
But I was like, welling up with her. I was like, wow. And then we sat down, and, I never did get any food in the end, but sat down chatting to her and everything like that. And, obviously, and we both went our separate ways, and I've never seen or spoke to her since. But it's absolutely devastating. And another time, I've been in a local town, and the worker behind the counters spat at me and refused to serve me and started shouting, "You murderer, you child killer," and everything like that. I'm not serving you. And I'm like, so straight away I launched him over the counter. I was like, I went mad. I was in uniform. I jumped up and I grabbed him and I dragged him over the counter. And I threw him out the shop. I dragged him out the shop. I was like, if you're not going to serve me, back to your own country. I said, because I've got more of a right to be here. And I said, and you're here because I'm here, because of what I do. I said, so don't stand there shouting at me. And actually, people then started offering to buy my food. And and subsequently, he ended up getting the sack. And I actually thought I was going to end up in the shit, more for the fact that I was in military uniform, more than anything. But yeah, and then I sort of turned and looked round, and there's two coppers sat there eating their food. They just looked, and just carried on eating, said nothing, and I was like, "Wow!" And then I made haste. I was like, "No, I'm done." But yeah,
No,
so yeah, it's funny.
You can see why they would,
Yeah. But the thing is, now, as sad as it is, we're now swayed that way because, like I say, there's nothing. The only thing that's happening in the world now that they kind of relate to is Ukraine, but we're not getting involved. People saying we should, some people saying we shouldn't. And it's like, well, you're in uniform, why aren't you? Oh, you're big enough to go and invade Iraq and Afghan. Why aren't you going in to help the Ukraine invade Russia? No? It's not our war.
Not our war. I mean, going back kind of to that, where people say it's not your war, you shouldn't have done this, you shouldn't have done that. I mean, the only thing that I was Telic 1 2003 with the artillery and that stuff like that. And I've spoke about it before on the podcast where I don't care what people say, whether they think it was an illegal war, an unjust war, or whatever. Right? That's not my fucking job. Right? My job is to go out there and do
what you're told.
Not do what do what you were told, but do what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And we did that, and we did it really well.
Well, where you guys were dug in the batteries, was just almost next to DTSG, wasn't it? So
some of them we ended up we were on the airfield in airport,
and then you had what was the female CIA or the female that was kidnapped, and the CIA come in and got her, and then I can't remember her name. She was an American girl, and then obviously the CIA come in and got her, and then DTSG popped up and just popped smoke and was gone. And I remember all the batteries, all the artillery batteries, literally bugging out, not even filling in the holes or anything like that. They were up and gone. And then, hours later, a big scud just wiped all out. It's like, and I remember sort of stood there because they don't fly very high. No. You look up and you're like, oh, and it is like the movie Superman when you got the big rocket and everyone kind of looks up. It is almost surreal like that, isn't it? When you see one, yeah,
but I mean, it's weird, isn't it? That was we've compared it with other people that Iraq 2003 was it's kind of turned into our Vietnam, where we came back thinking, yeah, we fucking did it. I was in the first Gulf War. We come back from that, we were heroes. You come back from like Ireland, you feel great. You're not a hero to the general public, but you are to your family and stuff like that. But when people talk about the war in 2003, it's like with disdain and disgust. And you're like,
Yeah.
well, no, that was my job, and went up there, we did it, and we should be proud of what we did. Don't care what the public think. And then it carried on, and people said we shouldn't have been in Afghan. Doesn't matter where we should have been. The only place we really should have been in the last 30 years was Bosnia, and everyone fuckers forgot about that. Bosnia. I wanted to volunteer to go to Bosnia. I didn't have to in the end. I just got dick for it. I went out there in '95, and but I'd always said to the wife at the time, if I want to go there because that's where you're going to make a difference.
I'd done back-to-back tours out there.
Yeah.
So my first deployment was 1996, was Besbrook Mill, 2 Para. I was attached to them. It was what they called a pool chef. So I basically deployed with 2 Para, but then I was utilised all over the province to replace different people's R&R, things like that. So I was actually at Thiepval Barracks in October when the bomb went off there in 1996. I was part of that, helping sort of running around like headless chickens, trying to help people out there. Obviously, that Remy WO2 sadly lost his life. That was kind of like my first experience of war. I just turned 19. I turned 19 in September. I was like, fucking hell, this is a bit of an eye opener. Then someone committing suicide. I went to replace him on Stag. Shot himself.
And then a mate of mine did that.
And that was in Northern Ireland, in Dungannon. And I was just like, finding someone like that is not a nice thing. Then Bosnia, I don't know what was worse, the fact that wild animals were used to clear minefields, or the things that you saw, laying on the side of the road, deceased bodies and things like that. Especially, it wasn't so bad like in Dalma Warehouse and, Split Northport and things like that. But the further up north you went, Lipper, Banja Luka, Gornifikoof, Metal Factory and places like that, the further up north you went, the worse it became. And then I came back and then went straight back out there because one of the chefs that didn't want to go stuck his hand in the deep fat fryer to get out going on tour. So I went straight back out there, volunteered. Loved it. I was single at the time. Came back and then spent a few months back in the UK exercising that, and then went out to Sarajevo to the UN headquarters. So even though the UN had left, or we were out there as like I4 and S4, the UN were still out there at the UN HQ in Sarajevo. So because I went out there for a few months, just under 3 months, I qualified for the UN medal because I was working for the UN headquarters out there as a chef. So I had someone try and pull me up the other week. Well, you weren't in the army when the UN were out in Bosnia. I was like, you're right, I wasn't, but I was. Your medals
I
aren't
work for the UN, you know what I mean?
And he was trying to troll me. So I was like, I kept like just drip feeding him. And I was like, if you'd have asked me, how come you got a UN medal? Because you were out there in 96 to 97 through for 98 for best part of a year, and then came back and then went out there until like 98 into 99. How come you got a UN medal? Because the UN weren't operating as the UN out there. It was I4 and S4, whatever way it was, K4, whatever it was. I would have been like, well, that's because I was working at the UN headquarters in Sarajevo. So I did qualify, and they carried on giving their medals out to people that served there up until 2002, and they closed down in 2005. So that's how I got that medal.
I didn't know that, I didn't know that.
And then, so then come back, and then I deployed UN tour of Cyprus. Great, come back from that. I only done 4 months out there. Then it was CF Sarir too. Was you part of that? Oman, big Oman exercise. That was 2001.
No, I wasn't. No, I was in. I was on an ERE posting at Larkhill then.
Yeah. So
I missed out on that one.
When was the Twin Towers? That's 2001, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were due to fly out the day the Twin Towers got hit. So we were all there, ready to deploy out up to the airport and that. And then obviously we all got paraded on the drill square and said, right, we might be getting re-rolled. And everyone was like, what's going on? Then obviously the CEO was like, just there's been a massive terror attack in the United States. The Twin Towers have been hit by planes. They think it could be worldwide. Germany might get attacked. England might get attacked. This could start World War III. The old.
Yeah.
No one knew what was going to happen, did they? No. We were all given these briefings. And it's like, well, we could be deploying here, there, wherever. And no one knew. And then, a few hours later, it's like, right, come on, we're going to Hanover on the plane. We're off to Amman as originally planned. They're not cancelling the exercise, and that was it. Spent best part of 4 months in the bloody desert filling up sandbags and putting up tents.
I went to Oman in '93. I think it was.
So that would be the original career.
Yeah, the original one. And they made us do. They says, right, you're going to do a walk. It's called the Jebel Jones. And we were like, what's that then? I've got 40 Ks in 2 days. And we were like, what? You can't walk in a day. Yeah,
because you had. So we were based between sort of Muscat and Salalah, depending on where we were. And since Sif Sarir, I mean, I've been out to Oman loads of times. Absolutely love it. So like my last regiment, 17 Port Maritime, we were always out in sort of like Oman, Jordan, places like that, doing port task groups and things like that. So 3 Commando Brigade, we go out there with 3 Commando Brigade quite a lot. We use the Mexi to support the commandos and the SF roles and things like that. So that was another posting I had, was 2-2 in Hereford, which is a good posting. So as a marine engineer, you get the choice of Hereford or Poole with the SS or the SBS, depending on which one you get selected for. Sometimes you get selected for both, so you'll come from one and do the other. Which again, it's another good tour, another good opportunity. Cyprus, Falklands, other postings as well. So it's another good reason to transfer to marine engineering.
Right, so I mean, the people who are listening to this up to now won't know where I've found you or know where I know you're from. So Dan's got a massive TikTok following. How the hell did that start?
So I'll go back to, I did have a massive TikTok following. So on my original account, I got nearly 30,000. That got hacked. And I'm still getting messages on Instagram asking for vouchers for game coupons to get my account back. Shitheads. They can have my account. So like most people, COVID, it was kind of a bit like a bet for my son had gone onto TikTok and he was showing me a TikTok. And I said, I'll join TikTok. He was like, oh, yeah, you're going to cramp my style, Dad. I'm not adding you as a friend or anything like that. So I went on there. They had these grow pies. I started putting videos on. I think one of the first videos I put on was me hitting 180 on a dartboard. So I pretend to throw the dart, obviously transition it so the dart goes in the treble 20. It took me about 3 hours to actually throw them darts in the treble 20. And it got like 500 odd thousand views.
Wow.
Most of it calling me an absolute tosser, saying I could never hit 180 if the dartboard was placed in front of me. That's not how you throw a dart, kind of thing. So if anyone goes onto the Dan Veteran account where I'm stood there working as a doorman with a Rottweiler, go and scroll through, you can see that and look at the comments. Not many of them are very nice, to be honest. And I was like, wow. So I thought, this is great. But I actually started off the TikTok account to start then helping veterans with mental health. So I started doing live chats and things like that. So obviously I worked out very quick that, right, to go live, I need 1,000 followers. So I went on to these grow pies, basically just follow till I got 1,000. And then it was just like, great, keep them there. If they interact, they interact. If they don't, I don't care. If they delete me, whatever, as long as I can then. And then it started going up quite quick, and I went up to like 5,000 in like a week. And I was like, oh, bloody hell. And then it sort of slowly died down. Then it sort of fluctuated up until I got to about 25, 26,000. But I was getting loads, like most of my following were military or want to be military or veterans, so a bit wanting to join up. So advice from younger generations. What was it like being in the military? What did you do? What jobs can you do? How do I go through training? How do I deal with that? Am I going to get PTSD if I join the military? That was always a big one for the younger guys. So all these sort of like 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds that were wanting to join the military, they're like, I want to join the military, but I don't want to get PTSD. And it's like, not ever. So then you have to explain to people that the military are stigmatized with PTSD. Anyone can suffer PTSD.
Yeah.
I said, and the people that suffer from PTSD the most are probably paramedics that work in ambulances, firemen, and traffic officers in the police. I said, because what they see on a day-to-day basis from traffic accidents, fires, and general accidents in life aren't what we're designed to see day in, day out. You know, I said, we sign up to go to war, we expect to see bodies in that context because that's part of our job.
I mean, you kind of train for it, or it's mentioned and
Yeah.
mentioned and mentioned. You know? It's always in the back of your mind.
That was a big one that sort of hit home. Was a lot of these youngsters thought that if they were going to join up and sign on to the military, that they were going to actually end up with PTSD. So that was sort of like a big sort of stigma to sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, to sort of dispel. And everything, you know, and obviously explain to them that not everyone suffers PTSD. Some people don't, but you know, the fact of the matter is, you could watch someone playing football on a Sunday afternoon and a bad tackle and snap their leg, and that can give you PTSD. And the one thing that makes me wince and cringe and go, "Oh, I can't watch that," is someone breaking their ankle. You know,
hang on, shh. Just thought of fucking hell, my legs hurting.
And ironically, I've got a fractured ankle at the moment, and all my ligaments are torn and everything like that. And it looks like a purple balloon. It looks like I've got Purple Lackey's head on my foot. But yeah, so that's the one thing that will turn my stomach. And then it was like a lot of it was about joining up, about what to do, you know. And then along came the mental health side of it, and the signposting and how to get help and where to get help from, and the stigma and everything like that. And then everyone else started joining on, you know, and it was like, you know, there is a real stigma around the military, and you know, you've got to kind of get rid of that stigma. And you know, then I ended up talking to nurses and healthcare workers, and then people that have worked with COVID or were working with COVID, and you know, firemen and ambulance drivers and things like that. And it was like, wow, you know, and I think, I mean, we're bad in the military, but you know, actually, we're just a small portion of society that's actually suffering the same. It's just not enough out there being done, albeit it's being done now. But you know, and better late than never, as they say. You know, had they discovered this, well, they knew about it years and years ago.
Yeah,
They
but I mean, it was just
never acted upon it, did they? Because they didn't realise the effect that it's having.
I mean, the thing is as well, when we were, you know, I joined in 1985, and it wasn't discussed. I mean, up until, you know, I left in 2012, and it really wasn't discussed even then. And you were kind of taught to not talk about it.
Man up.
Yeah, man up. But the thing is, you didn't really understand what it was, or you know, I mean, my first experience of it really was when I was posted at Thorney Island when 47 moved from Germany to there. I went missing for a bit, kind of went AWOL a little bit, so it took me a year out. When I got back from Collie, there was a guy who was working in the officers' mess. I won't mention his name, one, because I can't remember it, unfortunately. But basically, he disappeared, and everyone thought he'd gone AWOL. And it wasn't until about 3 or 4 days later that one of the cleaners went into the west wing or the east wing of one of the annexes, and there he was hanging from the stairwell. And he'd been there, you know, a couple of days, but it, you know, because of mental health. And he was always he kept saying to people, "I'm not right, I'm not right," but it was kind of ignored. You know, it was kind of like, he's got issues. You fucking stay away from him. It was almost like we said earlier, it was like being a leper. Almost.
Fucking head case.
Yeah, you know,
and you weren't a head case. You needed fucking help.
Yeah. But then the thing is, the people who, you know, in my era, in our era, you know, I mean, I only joined a bit before you, really. Since I've left the military 12 years ago, you know, I can say I can count on one hand the people I know who've took their own lives. Right. I don't want to go onto that hand. You know what I mean? You know, there's people out there who still need help.
Unfortunately, now I'd need my hands and my feet.
Yeah.
You know, one of my best mates just before Christmas you know, his wife phoned me up and like crying her eyes out, saying like, you know, he needs help. He needs help. I was like, "But give me the phone." I put him on the phone. So anyway, I was like, "Look, come on, let's go and have a chat, sort of shout." I said, "Otherwise, I'll be driving up there to slap you, you dozy dick," you know. And then start having a bit of a laugh and a joke and everything like that. 4 hours on the phone, and he was like, "Dan, I fucking love you, brother. You know, fucking sorry for being a dick. You know, I'm just having a wobble." I was like, "Mate, that's what I'm there for. You know, just you know, you go and get help again. Go back. You know, just don't keep going to your treatment and then second halfway through thinking you're all right now. You know, you've got to stick with it." And he's like, I will do this time. Yada, yada, yada. Fucking cheers, mate. Oh, I feel much better now. Yada, yada, yada. 12 minutes past 2 in the morning, gets a phone call from his missus. Gone. You know, and he'd written a letter saying, thanks to everyone that supported me, but I just can't do it anymore. Please, I don't want anyone at my funeral. And like, because he'd like written it, it was like arguing in a court of law as to, you know, who could attend his funeral. And like, they were basically like, it's kind of like his last dying wish. He doesn't want anyone at his funeral.
Yeah.
You know, but they agreed to let his wife and that go and everything. But they said, well, we can't, you know, she phoned up and she was like, he's written down that he doesn't want anyone at his funeral. He's adamant, like he doesn't want any of his friends and family at his funeral. You know, that broke me up, you know, and basically because he didn't want to be remembered as a burden and everything like that. But, you know, he's just one of so many over the last, well, I left in 2019, 5 years ago. But yeah, and then, well, I'd say since 2016. Yeah, I dread to think how many. I'd need my fingers and my toes.
I mean, the thing is, if anyone's listening to this or, you know, sees you on TikTok and everything and stuff like that, and through my own experiences that I've had recently, what we talked about before we started recording, I've found that you need to talk. You do need to talk. I mean, it's helped me to understand what I need in my life to help me. I would have sat, my mobile never rings. Very, very rarely my mobile rings because I'm quite on my own. I don't, you know, I'm really surprised I do podcasts. So I fucking don't like talking to people. And I never, you know, if the phone would ring, I'd look at it. I can't be asked talking to you. I can't bother. I don't want to talk to you. But recently, I'm actually answering the phone, which has helped me a lot. And I've got a handful of people who keep ringing me to see if I'm all right. And I am all right, you know. Well, I think I'm all right. I'm fine now. You know, well, you don't know, do you? But
that's just it. When you say
answering
you're
the
all right,
phone and
are you
talking.
all right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I'd like, you know, it's the same thing what we all do. It is what it is. We have to deal with it and stuff like that. But you can't deal with stuff like this on your own. You have to.
No, you
You have to
can't.
seek
No,
help.
absolutely not. You know, I've been struggling lately. And as stupid as it sounds, you know, and how can I explain? So we got a dog. We got a Frenchie
Yeah,
called Blue. He's on the TikTok page. Sadly, we lost him Easter Sunday. And I didn't really want a dog. But it was like he was made for us. You know, he was there. And when I was down, I was struggling. It was like he knew. He'd come and sit
yeah,
on you, and he'd like look at you. He'd put his paws on you, and he'd just rest his head on you, and he'd just go to sleep on you, and things like that. And he wouldn't let you go. You know, and then he'd follow you to make sure you were right. And then, not sadly, he died suddenly. I fucking struggled like hell.
yeah,
Absolutely struggled like mad. One thing it's helped me do is mourn the loss of my father and mourn the loss of some of my friends, but it's also sort of re-triggered some of my emotions that I'd got over the years, and you know, sort of brought some of them back. I'm getting there again now, but oh my god, it was a struggle, and the only way I could deal with that was to talk to the veterans. You know, like I said in the WhatsApp group, you know, I put a message in there and said I'm struggling, blah 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 blah. Spoke to other friends and that, and it does help. You know, it massively helps.
yeah,
Absolutely, 100%. It's good stuff. You know, and I think, you know, from someone that's gone through the CPM process and through tills and I trying to think the other one. Who was the other one? Combat stress. Gone through combat stress. But sort of at the time they were just in that sort of that demise of what are they actually doing? You know, are they taking money? Are they helping people? Are they just fobbing us off? But, you know, I was lucky. I had a really good guy who sort of looked after me. John, his name was, ex-fireman. So he kind of understood from the mental health side, not necessarily the military side. He admitted that. Whereas I then went on to the DCMH in Portsmouth, HMS Nelson. Well, I then went on to Tills, had a lovely woman there, and then she left because she was promoted, and then I was given a young woman who was a young Muslim woman, and I like sat there, and she's like, so the first thing I said to her was like, "Have you read my file?" She's like, "Yeah." And I goes, "So why are you asking me these questions?" I goes, "Because if you read my file, you'd know the answer. So have you read my file, or are you just asking me because you want to check my information is correct?" She looked at me and she's like, "Well, I want to make sure I've got the information correct." I was like, "Don't lie to me then." I said, "If you haven't read my file, say no, I haven't read your file. You've been assigned to me. You're new, but I want to hear it from your side, and then I will cross-reference details." So I said, "Not only that," I said, "You're Muslim." I said, "I don't know whether I could carry on with this." I said, "No offence to you," I said, "but if you'd read my file, the reason I'm here is because I feel responsible for the death of a Muslim woman and a child for trying to do the right thing." And she just sat there, she's like, I don't know what to do. I was like, "I suggest you go." you know, and that
You've
was
got to have the right fit, yeah.
If you remember, going from Kuwait into Iraq, you went through Safwan village.
Yeah.
On the border there. So obviously you went in, you had your proven routes, didn't you? You're in and out. And then, do you remember where the square was? Just not far from like what was effectively like that little petrol station thing, in the middle of the bloody
Yeah. I'm
sort
trying
of
to remember.
village there.
I only went through there once.
So
When we breached.
we'd been down to Schreiber Port. We'd commandeered a 14-ton wrecker and trailer.
Yeah.
So basically, we'd gone back. We'd then sort of come back into Iraq, into Basra Air Station. This was in 2003, so we'd taken over Basra, and we were staying in the actual terminal bit.
Yeah, I spent a few nights in there.
Yeah, so probably cooked for you then. So yeah, but then we went back into Kuwait and had to load up with a load of rations and everything like that to bring back for the guys that were deploying out on the ground, and obviously like the artillery lads that were out on the dug in, and the lads that are out on the rebros, and obviously the infantry guys and everything that are out dug in on the ground and on the oil fields and things like that. So anyway, so we came through. We got pushed down the wrong route, and we got hammered. I was at top cover. We got absolutely decimated. Petrol bombs stowed. Thousands of them robbed the rations. Literally thousands of them just descended on us and just stole all the rations. Not a lot we could really do about it, because obviously you can't really go blatting off rounds. So anyway, I remember like looking over, and behind the building there was a guy with an RPG. Just straight away, as quick as I put my weapon up to my shoulder and cocked it, I heard this crack, and I like jumped down under the component. I was like, and the guy that had the RPG was down, and there was a detachment of Marines coming through the same time as us, and I was just like, thank fuck for that. Absolutely, thank fuck. I was like, if I ever knew who that was, I'd buy him a beer. So anyway, that was that. We then sort of all that dispersed and everything. Sort of the QRF come out and everything like that. Everyone got dispersed. There was a woman and a child. Sort of they used to do that, didn't they? And sort of food and water and everything. So I gave them my ration pack. I was like, "Do you know what? I've got nothing else. I've got a bottle of water. I've got some rations, bags of sweets and that." And I chucked it out through the cupola down to them. Went off. We then went back and basically got debriefed. And it was like, "You're gonna have to go back into Q8 and restock. This time we'll send you with a QRF to meet you at the border on the way back, so it doesn't happen again. But we need them rations to go to the front line, so I had to drive all the way back down to Kazar, I think it was, and get reloaded with a load more rations and everything like that. On the way back, they were hung in the square. No food, British soldiers. So, and that stuck with me all my life. And it was the guilt, and it was like, well, if I'd have been a prick and just been selfish and said fuck off, they'd still be alive today. But and everyone's like, we can't think like that. You tried to be nice, you tried to do the right thing. You didn't do that, and I was like, but I did. I just put a bullet in the head, because effectively what I've done is got them killed.
It wasn't you. It was a strange fucking country.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, at the end of the, when the war finished, we moved to Scheibe, parked up. Yeah. Half the battery or half the regiment, basically. All the vehicles were on Scheibe, and the half the regiment fucked off down to different places. Half of my battery went down to Alpha, and we stayed doing getting the vehicles ready to go back. And then one night somebody said, right, we're going to be dry tomorrow, and we were like, fucking dry now, aren't we? We're not allowed beer. So apparently no one had made a decision on it. So we heard a rumour that there was an off licence in Basra, and there was just near the palace. One of the lads knew where it was, so we borrowed a Land Rover, as you do. Everyone chipped in, and we shot off into town. And we were on our own, just me and this lad and a Land Rover, going to this off licence to buy beer in the middle of a fucking war zone. How weird is that? And we pulled up at this place that he knew. He went in. I'm sat in the Rover looking round, and everyone seemed really fucking happy to see us. There was a funny thing happened. Somebody drove into the back of us. I shit myself, thinking I've been rammed on purpose. Jumped out, went to cock my rifle, and the locals all ran out, dragged this kid out of the fucking car, and beat him half to death. Turned out he was pissed up.
Yeah.
Just drunk driving to the back of the Rover. As my mate was walking out with all his crates, followed by a couple of locals carrying all these crates as well. So get him in the fucking Rover, we're off. But everyone seemed so happy to see you. When we were nipping out, one of the things I did while I was out there for the regiment or for the battery, I had a little old video camera with us. Or a normal digicamera, an old one. And I was recording everything and taking photos and stuff like that, which was great for me because I got everyone got used to me doing it, and I was just fucking walking around on my own, fucking doing stuff. I got left to it, and the consequences of that was that every time, the battery commanders and stuff like that were going out to see different places, like the Clover Leaves or somewhere over there, they'd fucking grab me. Come on, got videos and pictures to take. I was like, fucking hell, here we go. But the people they were kind of happy to see it. And then within weeks, it changed. You know what I mean?
It was like someone flicked a switch, wasn't it?
Literally, it was like overnight.
I remember, So, because I remember having to go down and cut the local LECs, local employed civilians, from outside the front of Scheibe and everything that were working and that. There'd be a couple of hundred there. You get the ID cards, you go and sign them off next to the POW camp and everything like that, and then you bring them in and then all of a sudden it switched, and then you go out there, there'd be thousands of them, but they'd be kicking off with you. If you didn't give them work and things like that, it's like, wow, it's actually quite a scary scenario having to go out and collect your local employed civilians that were working in the camp for the Allied forces and that. But I'm pretty sure he was artillery. He was struck by lightning in Scheibe in 2003. So we was in Scheibe, and me and this guy that I mentioned earlier, Paul Anderson, we were fixing a FEPS generator, and the artillery were just down from us. And there was two lads stood on top of a DAF, or one was stood on a DAF, one was stood on the floor next to a DAF. And obviously, for those of you that have ever worked on FEPS generators, it says on the side, "Do not use it in like a thunderstorm," and a big picture of like a cloud and lightning. So anyway, we're tinkering around, tinkering around trying to get this FEPS to work to power the lighting inside this hangar and everything like that. And as we got it working, literally the second we got it working, there was this almighty flash and then this crack of thunder. And we didn't know whether it was a bomb, whether it was a thunderstorm. We didn't know what the fucking hell had happened, other than we needed to change our underwear. Anyway, we had a padre who was American. He was from Philadelphia. And he came back an hour later, he was nearly in tears. And I went up to him. He slept in the bed next to me, in the camp cot next to me. And I went up to him, like, Harjay, you all right? And he's like, that flash of lightning earlier. I was like, yeah. I goes, is that what it was? I said, thanks for telling me. I said, because I thought we were getting bombed, like, trying to make a joke of it. And he was like, no, he says, 2 artillery lads. I'm sure they were artillery. I'm sure he said artillery. I could be completely wrong.
Yeah, I don't think they were my regiment. There was a few regiments out there.
Yeah, but there was 2 lads. The one that was stood on the floor next to the DAF was the one that actually died because it earthed through him. The one that got struck that was on top of the DAF and it blew him off actually survived.
Yeah.
It was one that was on the floor. But yeah, it like literally struck by lightning. So yeah, that was kind of like, we had a guy in Kuwait. He drove into a roadblock that the RMPs had put out that day before we'd even gone into Iraq, and that he was the first death in theatre from 180SR.
It's strange that you mentioned that. I did an interview with a guy called Roy, who was Pioneer Corps. He joined before the first Gulf War, and is a very long, interesting podcast. It's 4 hours long for everything that happened to him, and he was one of the part of the repatriation party and stuff like that. So they're the guys who went out in the first Gulf War to pick up the dead, bury the, repatriate them or whatever. And something he said, you wouldn't normally think about it, but he said, like, when they went out there, everyone was already, there was people, there was forces there, and they were all in their areas and stuff like that. As soon as they landed there, they started working, and I was like, oh, nothing was happening. He goes, nah. He goes, there was many deaths before the war started as there was in the war. There was like 30 odd people died. Some through natural cause, or most of them through natural causes, actually, heart attacks and stuff like that. Accidents on the range, accidents with vehicles, RTAs and stuff like that. And they, fucking take your hats off to these guys. They had very little training, very, very little training. And then they're actually doing their job, which is repatriating the bodies. Yeah. They didn't have enough body bags, they didn't have vehicles and stuff like that. Typical fucking army. There you go. Well, what am I going to do? Oh, you'll work it out.
I remember listening to it over the net, the 6 RMPs.
Yeah.
Obviously got killed in Iraq. And, I remember sitting on the top of the roof of Basra Air Station, watching them go onto the back of that plane, and we sat there. We had a can of beer each. We all had a can of beer that we'd stolen, acquired. And there was a Royal Engineer lad called Baz. He sat there. He was playing Fast Cards by Tracy Chapman.
Fucking hell. So what's the plans for the future for you then?
I'd like to retire and move abroad.
Yeah, so would we all.
Yeah. So the company I work for, can you open the windows, babe? The company I work for, they've just actually taken over a major global corporation in Canada. So within the next month, I'm going to start digging into the process of transferring out. Apparently, it's quite easy, and they help you. So I actually spoke to my boss about it yesterday. We had a big meeting. So every 3 months, I get all my engineers together. We talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and obviously they can reciprocate that to me as their boss. The good and bad and the ugly about me. Constructive criticism, because we're not all perfect. And criticism, if done the right way, is good. Like I said to him, I'm not always going to get it right. I'll forget things, and I'll get things wrong, and unless you tell me I'm getting it wrong, I'll keep doing it the way I'm doing it. If you tell me I'm great, then great. I'm going to keep doing it that way, but I don't believe I am for 1 minute. So we'll wait and see what comes out of that in the next week. But yeah, I had a chat with my boss. He was like, we'll do it. There's an internal process. It's not that hard. And I'm like, brilliant. So yeah, I've dropped the hints to the right people. So yeah, I'll wait and see what happens. I'd like to retire on a ranch in Canada, and yeah, maybe
everyone's got to have a dream, mate. Everyone's got to have a dream.
Take up sturgeon fishing, on the South Saskatchewan River, or go and live in a log cabin in Lake Louise or in Banff in the winter.
Yeah. I mean, one of the first guys I interviewed, 84 years old, fought in Aden, ex-3RHA, and he, at the end of his time, he emigrated to Canada and joined the Canadian like TA type of thing, the reservists. Got to his full colonel out of that. But he's retired now. But what he does, he lives in Vancouver, so when it gets a bit cold, he buggers off south to Mexico for a few months.
Vancouver, that's what they call it, because it's full of Chinese tourists. Yeah. So we got invited to do what's called the Snow to Surf Lepage Relay. And it's won every year by a team called the Ball. It was at the time, going back to 2004 to 2006, it was won for the last sort of 8 years, I think, by a team called the Banzai Warriors, who were all ex-Olympic athletes in their chosen fields.
Yeah.
So it was, we actually came, I think the first year we'd done it, we came fourth. And then the second year we'd done it, I think we came third. In out of like 80 odd teams, so we done bloody well, considering we're not sort of biathlon, downhill slalom skiers, cross country runners through snow and kayak and canoeists and things like that. So yeah, it was like a marathon run, a marathon cycle, a canoe race, as in a 2-man canoe, a kayak race, a mountain bike race. There was another running race, and then different cross-country skiing, langlaufing sort of skiing, downhill slalom skiing, biathlon sort of skiing, all these sort of disciplines all sort of put together. And it was on Vancouver Island. So sort of like we stayed in an apartment in it was either Comox or Nynamo, I think. It was either Nynamo was where the race started, and we were staying in Comox, or vice versa. But yeah, but it was an amazing experience.
I imagine it was. I'm fucking out of breath listening to it.
It was. I mean, back in them days, I was fit, but kayaking 10 kilometers across a lake is hard graft, absolutely. And I've been in the kayak plenty of times, but never a racing kayak where you got little foot pedals and little steering gears and things like that, and you've got to manage the whole lot whilst doing that across the lake. Oh my god! In fact, I think it was 8 kilometers, 8 kilometers, 5 miles. I think it was something like that. Basically worked out to 5 miles. But yeah, and the best part of it was the dental surgeon in Battus. At the time, she was a captain, Liz Kemp, came with us. She denied herself when she went for a shower. She didn't care that the boys were there. So that even if we had come last, it'd have been worth it for that.
Not that note. Right, well, we've come up to an hour and a half. I don't want to take any more of your time, really. So I think we'll end the podcast there for now. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Cheers,
good luck with the
Frankie.
future. And I mean, I really hope you end up in Canada. Good luck with your TikTok. Is it a TikTok channel?
I suppose, yeah. TikTok,
yeah, I suppose it's called that.
TikTok page, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
yeah.
I've only just started on TikTok, so
To be honest, I've taken a sort of backward step from it. When you get to a big account and you lose it, and then through no fault of your own, it is kind of demoralising. But I will get back on it sort of more actively one day.
I mean, I've noticed that there's the nickname and there's the Mill Talk, where all the guys are like starting to collaborate more with each other.
Yeah, that's
like the
always
guys you
been
talk
a thing.
about, like Alex, like Ricky Vet.
Rich. So the Mill Talk is like the American thing, and I think we call it Vet Talk, I think, and it's the collaboration between the two. So, we've got quite a lot of sort of the Allied Forces, Canadian, Danebats and, the Americans and things like that. Even some Polish military on there and things like that, sort of all collaborating together, which is nice to see, not just your own, but yeah.
It's entertaining for people as well. And like you said, when you mentioned earlier about what you were doing was informing people, it's not just about, people I do this. I'm not doing this for fame and glory or riches, because there's none. I'm hoping that someone's going to listen to this and it might help them. And like you said, you said earlier about when you were running your charity, and I'm not comparing this to a charity, don't get me wrong. But if it does stop and make one person think, that there's people who've gone through the same issues, and nearly everyone I've had on the podcast, nearly everyone, right? And I've done 47 interviews. Yeah, about 48 interviews now. There's only a couple of them where people haven't had a story to tell about their mental health, and it's like, it's opened my eyes a lot, really has. And and like you said earlier, there's lots and lots of people out there who don't have issues. They've left the military and they don't have any issues. Some people develop issues many years later. Like 12 years later for me, for anything to kick in.
So that's quite a common thing. Is a lot of it comes out just as you're leaving or after, because whilst you're in the military, you're still in that environment and you feel safe in that environment, which is why a lot of people then suddenly realise, like a year, 2, 3, 4, whatever years later, or as they're leaving, actually they're losing that security, they're losing that safety, and then that's when it starts to hit home. And it's being able to, the thing is with PTSD, you're always going to have it. There's no getting rid of it, but what you can do is you can manage it so that it doesn't run your life.
Your life, yeah. You've got to find your trigger. You've got to find your trigger.
And that's it.
You've got to find that
point. It might take a week, it might take a day, take a day, week, year, whatever. But eventually you'll find what that trigger is, and you'll find what helps you cope with it. It could be, I've got some coconut scented butter, Vaseline in, and like lip balm, and every now and again, I'll just be like that, because the smell takes my mind off the smell that I'm thinking about. So if anyone suffers from smells and things like that, something like that, or an Evo stick. People use, the old Vicks vapor rub sticks, because it then distracts you, or some people sit there with a fidget spinner, or something like that, because again, it then suddenly distracts you. The gym, the days of, your son Major saying, you've got to be mentally prepared, you've got to be mentally fit, blah, 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 blah. Fitness releases all the endorphins, which does help your mental health balance. I suppose me sat here thinking I've got to lose a couple of stone because I've given up smoking.
I'll tell you what, mate, I'm not standing up.
No. So I've definitely let myself go since I left. But a lot of that has been because I give up smoking. A year ago.
No, mine's because I drink so much. Cut that out. But, right, I'll end the recording now. Again, I'd just like to say thanks for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking.
Cheers.
Right.